Join lifelong Star Wars fans Lauren and Steph as they dive into the world of Star Wars fan fiction, discussing a new fic each month, breaking down the writing style, characters, canon relationship, and more. This is your source for Star Wars fan fiction recommendations. So come on and find out why it's one hell of a fanfic.
Hey y'all, I'm Lauren, and welcome to One Hell of a Fanfic, where we talk about a new Star Wars fanfic every month. And tonight I'm here with Steph. How's it going, Steph?
Hi. Just great. I am enjoying the weather. I'm so glad that it's finally kind of settling in here. Uh, I'm about an hour south of Chicago, so I don't know where everyone else is doing, but we're going to be in the upper 70s, low 80s, and it's going to be beautiful for the rest of the week.
Oh, that's super nice. Yeah, that's definitely cheerful once it starts. I don't know, kind of I'm so sick of this back and forth right now with it that that's a little rough. So it's nice when it's actually made a decision on what it's going to do.
Yeah,
Should we talk about what we read this month?
I hope so.
Okay. What did you pick for us?
All right. I picked, well, you found it, but I picked Mace Windu's Guide to Accidental Friendship by the biggest oof.
That's us right now. Not writing the not writing the author
Oh.
name down.
Alright, so this fanfic was written back in 2021. It had 7,500 words. I finished it in about an hour. There was no spice level to it. It was not a romance at all. It's canon divergent, though most of it stays pretty it's pretty safely canon, and then like something happens and then it really does divert from that point.
Yeah.
And what are our tropes?
It's a fix it. So that's the
Yeah.
thing that diverts.
Yes.
Is it is a fix it. But yeah, it's like you said, like even though it is a fix it, a lot of stuff does fit into canon. So it's not a fix it for everything. It's a
Yeah.
fix it for a pretty key event that changes the course of Star Wars, which you can probably guess what that is. The author summary, it's actually the same as the first paragraph of the story, too. And so that goes there are very few things that Mace Windu hates. Hate is a Sith emotion, so he tries not to feel it. Annoyance, irritation, disappointment, bone crushing exhaustion at the stupidity of the Senate. Sure, they're common in Mace's arsenal of limited sentiments, but hate, no, that's reserved for almost nobody. Mace Windu hates Anakin Skywalker. Or Mace hates Anakin until a series of events causes him to shift perspective. So, that's a very heartwarming premise that had me excited because of course I love Mace and I love Anakin. So, I wish that they could have been friends, but unfortunately that is not the way that it went in canon. But why do you think people should read this?
I think people should read this because we don't get enough Mace in anything. He is such a fun character to see in the movies, but I think we get him in the comics, but we don't really get much time with him, and you do get that in this. So, like, a lot of it's from his perspective.
Yeah, and you're getting to see his reasoning for things, which we do get some of, like you said, we do get a little bit of that, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like in canon, it's kind of lacking for me. Like, I would like there to be more. So
Yeah.
I always appreciate whenever we have more of an explanation of that, which we definitely got in this fic. And it also, something else too that I really appreciated is that this fic, it shows Anakin and Mace's perspectives on the other person. And it makes it sound like they both, like, you can see where both of them are coming from and they both have good reasons, and they also both have not so good reasons for why they don't like each other. Like, they're both very human in that aspect.
Mhm.
And it also asks the question of if they had put aside their differences, then what could have happened? Like, what would be possible if they had been able to get past that? So, that's a pretty
Yeah.
cool thing to look at. It's time for my speech. Okay. So, what is this about? In my own words. So we start off with, as the author summary indicated for us. Oh, by the way, I should say, spoilers are happening. If you're thinking about reading this one and you don't want any spoilers, now is your time to turn back. I'm about to say all the details. So, As the author summary indicated, Mace hates Anakin, and he has some valid reasons for doing so. Notably, Anakin's arrogance. He seems like he doesn't take the Clone War very seriously, which offends Mace because the way Mace sees it is a lot of people are suffering and dying, and you're just kind of like joking around. And which that does get addressed later on in this fic. And he doesn't really take the Jedi tradition seriously. He backtalks to Obi-Wan. Like all of that just really gets on Mace's nerves because it just kind of feels like Anakin just doesn't really care about any of this. And Mace takes all of this very seriously. And he's assuming that Anakin doesn't based on Anakin's behavior. And Mace also has some reasons that are not quite so valid, such as, Mace kind of had a chip on his shoulder about Anakin from when Anakin was a child, which is like, okay, he's a child. Like, let's keep it in perspective here, you know. So you kind of there's a lot of moments where you get where Mace is coming from, and then there's a couple moments where Mace is kind of saying to himself, like, maybe I was a little hard on him in this instance. And another thing too that I felt like this fic did well is that when Mace is reflecting on all of this, there's also the situation that Mace was doing a lot of damage control during this time. They're really just trying to keep it together in the Jedi Council because when Mace first meets Anakin, we just had a Sith Lord show up. We don't know who the other Sith is. Qui-Gon dies. We've got that's a huge like situation in the Jedi Order because Qui-Gon was a very powerful Jedi. There's like a whole massive situation that they're dealing with. And also this kid shows up who needs a lot of extra attention and teaching because of his background. So it's just tricky. Like it's just a really tricky situation. And the Jedi Council and the Jedi Order is spread very thin. So that's, some context for kind of Mace's sort of short fuse with Anakin is he's dealing with a lot. And so over time, that frustration between the two of them, it kind of simmers. They don't like each other. They both know that they don't like each other. But during the Clone War, the two of them do have to work together a lot more. And they're put in situations where they're forced to spend time together, help each other, work together, kind of just figure it out. And a key moment, which kind of turns the tide for the two of them, is they're on a mission where there's a lot of people who are enslaved that they're trying to get out of a situation. And the people are not listening to Mace when he's trying to talk to them because they don't trust him. They don't know who he is. They're enslaved. They don't, their level of who they can trust is different from just like a regular person. And Anakin is actually able to talk with them and earn their trust for them to leave with the Jedi. And that has a really big impact on Mace. And it makes Mace realize, like, there's a lot about this kid that I don't fully understand that I haven't considered. And so going from there, every time they do a mission together, it's kind of like a little chip in that wall of mistrust. Like they're just kind of getting to know each other a little tiny bit more and kind of starting to be more empathetic towards the other person. And this ultimately leads to a conversation between the two of them where they actually do talk it out and they get to the bottom of it. And they both kind of admit to each other where they had judged the other person. And there's a really good back and forth between them in this scene that I won't really do justice right now. But I do think it's worth noting that in this scene, both of these characters are very self aware. Probably more self-aware than their canon counterparts, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, but they do get to the bottom of it, and they never become like best friends or anything like that. But they do at least they have sort of a kind of friendship, but it's sort of a friendship at arm's length. Like I think they both still get on each other's nerves, but they have a respect for each other. And so what that ultimately leads to is that when that scene happens with Palpatine in his office when he's trying to turn Anakin, when Mace shows up, Anakin actually lets Mace help him. And pretty much most of that scene goes the exact same way as it does in the movie, except for the end when Anakin actually joins Mace and kills Palpatine. And then that allows everything to get resolved from there. Thank you. I guess we should also mention all of the characters in this. We have Mace, Anakin, of course, those are who we spend the most time with. Very briefly, Obi-Wan, very briefly, the rest of the Jedi Council. We see a cameo of Ahsoka and we see a cameo of Rex.
And most of it was written in the third person from Mace's point of view. Or all of it, I think.
Yeah, and I did like how the perspective that it was written from in third person, it was kind of like a Samuel L. Jackson voice. I don't know if I would call it quite a Mace voice. Like there were moments where I was picturing Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction. Like I think when the F word is said a couple times, I was like, yeah.
Or well, the Star Wars equivalent of the F word.
Yeah. I think at one point there is the actual F word.
Oh, I missed it.
Or maybe that was just my brain replacing it with the F word. I could see that happening too. But what did you think about this one? What, like, as you were reading it, did you have any feelings, reactions, anything?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that you said it beautifully earlier that the fanfic did what it was set out to do. It went through a story and it got to it did fix the story in the end, or fix the whole canon problem. But it really focused on the actual story and how it got to that, and then the fix happened, and I like how it ended. I like that in the end, and I was like, because of this, in this world, it acknowledges that it's not a canon world. I like how that actual transition happened, because the transition happened was in another world. Had these things not happened, something different could happen. But in this world, and then it lists like the next however many years where all these little fixes happen, and Anakin gets to raise the kids with Padme on Naboo, and it just kind of ends beautifully. It kind of wraps it up with puts a little bow on it, but it doesn't focus on the fixed part. It really was the story. And in that story, it captured a lot of the things that we see in the Clone Wars, that hopeless feeling of war. And nothing was like romanticized. It was like, no, we've done these same battles over and over again. And there's people dying and there's injuries, and the author was another author. It seems like most of them are, that really seem to care about the clones.
Yeah. That seems like a very common sentiment in fanfic, which I love, which is really taking the time to make sure the clones are very human in the story.
How about you? Did you have any feelings about this?
Yeah, I just loved getting to see both perspectives, and I like it that the author didn't really take a side. Like, it wasn't like, "Oh, we hate Mace," because I feel like people are a little hard on Mace, like, because I get it that he was a jerk at times, I'm not denying that, but, like, he had a place that he was coming from. Mace could, like, he could see the future in a lot of instances. He knew Anakin was dangerous. Everybody else is going on and on about the chosen one, and he's like, "This guy is dangerous, like, I can see it in a way that a lot of other people can't." So, yes, he was a jerk, but he also, like, he was coming from a place that was kinda reasonable, and what I just mentioned was a canon version of Mace, the whole seeing the future thing. That's actually not mentioned in this fic.
No.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know, I'm always defending Mace because I'm like, sometimes people are jerks, yes. Okay, that sucks. But also, like, I feel like he was doing the best he could in a lot of instances. Was he perfect? No. Did he make mistakes? Yes. But I think he was in a really tough position as such a high member of the Jedi Council during such a tumultuous time. He was just trying to make it work, made some bad decisions along the way. And unfortunately, one of those was being a little too hard on Anakin rather than reaching out a hand and trying to help him. So I don't know. I really like Mace. So I appreciated how the author made it to where it's easy to see his side in this fic. And there's a lot of examples of, yeah, Anakin was arrogant and obnoxious at times. And he does make a lot of jokes about the war when it's like a really bad, horrible time. And to the wrong person, that's not going to come off great. And one thing I loved, I think this was like definitely a highlight of the story for me, was when the two of them are having that conversation. One of the main things that Mace brings up to Anakin about, like, this is why I don't like you, is he's like, you laugh and joke around and like cut up during like a battle. And like, this is serious and you don't seem like you're taking it seriously. And Anakin is like, I do take it seriously. The reason that I do that is because if I don't try to make Ahsoka smile sometimes, if I don't try to just like deal with the depressing crap that I see all the time in some sort of a way, I'm going to go crazy. Like I have to laugh because that's what keeps me sane. And like,
Yeah.
making like dark jokes, it is like a coping mechanism for a lot of people. And sometimes it doesn't come off right, but usually it's coming from, look, I'm just trying to deal with this. So I loved that conversation because you can see where both of them are coming from in that instance.
Right. The author, I like that that end conversation reflects that beginning part of the story where Mace is originally thinking about all of the things he hates about Anakin and why, how he always thinks he's the chosen one, and Anakin even addresses that later on in that conversation about how he just he was clinging to being the chosen one because all he wanted was to be accepted by a council that seemed to be so hard against him.
Yeah, because that was his first memory of being on Coruscant is a room full of old people. Well, I guess Mace isn't really old, but a lot of the other council members were old. Room full of people like telling him, "No, we don't like you and we don't want you here." That's
Yeah, go
awful.
home. Right.
Yeah. No, that and he's come all this way. Like, can you imagine what that would feel like? So, of course he doesn't trust them.
No.
And a lot of them, I don't think after that ever tried to explain or like really talk to him about what that was about. So that was just kind of like his first memory of the council that just stayed with him.
Yeah.
And Mace was the main person being like, no,
Of course they
because,
wouldn't like each other.
yeah, because Mace can see the future. So, I mean, at least in canon. So, like, okay, he has a point, but also, like, you're like being mean to like a kid right now, you know?
Yeah. What is he, like, 6?
Something like that.
Yeah,
6, 7, 8, somewhere in there.
poor kid.
I know. So yeah, so you get where Anakin's coming from when he's like, "Yeah, kept saying I was the chosen one because I felt so like excluded that I was like, "Oh, here's a way to prevent being excluded. If I'm the chosen one, they can't exclude me."
Did you have a favorite scene?
I would say probably that conversation between the two of them is high up there because
Mhm.
I feel like we get to see them sort out a lot of things. But I think my top favorite is probably when Anakin is communicating with the people that they're trying to free during that mission when he's using the language. And this was a really cool bit of lore that is not in canon that I thought this was a super cool addition. So the slaves have a language that they have developed themselves that it's the same language across all the worlds that enslaved people are on, and this is how they use to communicate with each other. So when May starts trying to tell them what to do, and they're like, we're not leaving with you. We don't even know you. And they're basically just ignoring him. Anakin is able to talk to them in that language and get them to trust him. I thought that was a super cool moment because that was kind of like the first time that Mace was like, oh, okay. There's something more to this guy than just being arrogant. Like there's something else there. So I thought that was a really nice scene.
For me, it was that last battle, that point that everything changed, where you see all these little bits through the story kind of changing the relationship between Mace and Anakin, but then we get the Palpatine fight, and like you said, it kinda goes through that same progression it normally does, but that last little bit when Mace is like, "No, we will help you save Padme." And it because of that relationship they'd built over the years, as little of a relationship as it is, he did trust him enough to stay on the side of the council versus Palpatine. And I enjoyed that accumulation of all of that into the one moment.
Yeah, because without, like, those little moments leading up to that, when Mace said, "We will help you," that wouldn't have had any effect on Anakin, and
Yeah,
also, I don't know if Mace would have even said that if it
no.
hadn't have been for all those little moments. So, yeah, it was cool to see how, like, all of the groundwork that the author had been laying earlier in the story ended up coming to fruition in that scene.
One question I did have for you was, did you see the life lesson coming? I was going into this not at all assuming we're gonna get a life lesson, but it came. Were you expecting that?
Wait, what was the life lesson other than,
That
like,
everyone has their own perspective, and really we should ask.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that was the life lesson. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know, I kinda could see it. I could see it, because that's, like, the whole thing between the 2 of them is, like, they're both just not really very sympathetic towards honestly, I guess that's really, like, a lot of the issues that a lot of people have with each other is people not being sympathetic to the other person.
Yep.
So but with them, it's, like, especially obvious that that's the case.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like, at least for me, like, in canon, I'm seeing 2 characters that are just doing the best they can in a really difficult situation, and their personality types just butt heads.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. I could see the life lesson there. Did
That's
you not
definitely a life lesson. I was
it
not see I didn't see it coming. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a silly story about how they accidentally became friends." And I was like, "Wow, that was actually rather wholesome on a battlefield while one's dying
Oh,
with a
yeah.
little stab wound." This is a
Yeah.
little one.
There's the moment where Mace thinks he's gonna die,
Yeah.
and Anakin tells him a story to try to keep him awake.
Yeah, no, that was sweet. We didn't even mention that. That was a sweet story.
Yeah, that was sweet. Okay, I have a question for you. In canon, do you think that Mace alone, like Mace changing and having this change of heart that he does in this fanfic, do you think that that would have been enough to stop Anakin's fall?
No. Not just it couldn't have been just Mace. It had to be more than that because you we us specifically having read a lot of the books and the comics and all of these things, there's so much more to it than it just Mace.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. And I feel like even just in the films, to me, you can still see that because I mean, honestly, I sometimes even wonder if even Palpatine by himself would have been enough because I mean, a big, huge piece in him going to the dark side is when the Tuscans capture his mother. I mean, Palpatine didn't have anything to do with that, at least in canon. So, I mean, yeah, for me, I think that there was a ton of things that came together that resulted in the fall. And I think Mace was one of those factors. But I think even if Mace had been like, we can help you, I don't know if that would have been enough.
No. No, I don't think so. I Anakin was already well on his path at that point.
'Cause even if you, like, in that scene, if you took Mace out and put Obi-Wan in his place and Obi-Wan had been like, "We can help you," I don't even think that would have been enough.
No.
Because he had issues with Obi-Wan too, so, yeah. I mean, to me, like, in my opinion, we can't blame it all on Mace, but oh, I see a kitty cat tail.
I've been hearing her digging at the door. I didn't think she could actually get it open.
Honestly, with the cats, it's better I mean, this is my experience. If I let Rocky just crawl all over me while I'm talking, it's actually less distracting than him sitting outside the door trying to get in.
Yeah, she's just been meowing. I'm
Yeah,
hoping that my microphone is able to just block that out.
I didn't hear anything. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, but he will. That is what he will do. He will just sit out there and meow. And I feel like that's worse. I'm like, yeah, you can just come climb all over me. I'll just try to stay focused.
Yes. What's a book club without a couple cats?
Right. Yeah, you gotta just let the cats join. It's too hard to keep them away.
So you picked the next story. What are we reading?
Okay, next month we are reading A Man Called Winter by Raylo Trash Compactor. As you can probably tell by the author's name, this is a Raylo fic. It is another Hades and Persephone retelling, which we did one of those like a long time ago, like
Yeah.
probably a year ago now. Um and yeah, we enjoyed that first one, so I figured it'd be fun to try another one. And that's kind of the cool thing about, and this is a common trope in romance, is Hades and Persephone retellings. And it's cool because I feel like each author just kind of puts their own spin on it. So that just had me interested in trying another one.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. You know how I feel about romances.
Yeah, you gotta sprinkle a little romance in there.
Where can people find us?
Well, we are on Instagram, which is One Hell of a Fanfic with a period in between every word. And that is where we post whenever we have a new episode coming out. And we are also on YouTube if you like to watch while you listen. We post our video recordings on YouTube at One Hell of a Fanfic. All right. Well, we will see y'all next month. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us at One Hell of a Fanfic. On this podcast, we discuss Star Wars fanfiction, but we do not own the rights to Star Wars or any of the written works we cover. We have no affiliation with Lucasfilm or the fanfic authors we credit for their work. For questions, please email us at onehellofafanfic@gmail.com.